Welcome to Wildcat Science with Mrs. Haugo. This is human biology, and we are in the psychology unit, part 10, and we are talking about the pillars of good mental hygiene, which include sleep, diet, exercise, social connections, a cultivation of purpose, perspective, and humor, and mindfulness. So, previously in part 9, we talked about social connections and we talked about the fraught world of social media and smartphones. And we talked about the happiness of teenagers and how we've really seen it plummet in the last 8 years. And this is quite concerning for myself, and I'm sure as a teenager it is too. And what are some steps we could do to kind of take control of our own happiness? And then, according to research, what are things that make us more happy and things that make us less happy, kind of in the overall picture, not at that exact moment. For example, my brain loves eating chips, but it will keep wanting to have that little ping of dopamine surge when I eat a chip, but then eating a whole bag of chips doesn't make me ecstatically happy. It makes me feel kind of crappy and not happy. So we're talking about our overall happiness. And then we discussed the cultivation of purpose, perspective, and humor, and you're working through your values-driven packet. And we talked about the final pillar we're going to talk about with mental hygiene, mindfulness, being a moment-to-moment awareness of our thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and the environment around. And it is being aware of what you're thinking, and there's lots of benefits of metacognition and mindfulness, sharpening your attention, being able to focus your attention, increasing your resiliency to stress, being able to jump back from things that throw you off, increasing your compassionate and making it more effective. So like when something stressful or bad happens, it doesn't derail you, but you're able to get back online, like your brain online, not literally online, and do something about it that helps someone else and then makes you feel good. Again, going back to that, cultivating a sense of purpose and meaning in your life is really important to feeling happy. Okay, so what else are some benefits to mindfulness? It has a positive benefit on relationships, which I would argue that everybody would want this. And how does it do that? Well, we're all going to get in conflict with people that we're in relationships with. Any relationship, friend, family, someone we're dating, there's going to be conflict. And we know from our relationship section of psychology that those stress hormones take our thinking brain offline, and it makes it so we don't do things that are good for our relationship in the long run. So mindfulness helps us return to normal quicker after a conflict, bring our body down, the stress response down, and so that we don't react so much and do things that we regret. Also, mindfulness can improve parent-child relationships, and the mindfulness of the parent can improve the child's behaviors. There are more positive child behaviors and fewer negative child behaviors found when you have a parent who is practicing mindfulness. So that is something that's really interesting at how we affect other people. Mindfulness can also reduce prejudices towards people in other groups, which is really interesting at how it can kind of rewire our brain a little bit. We all have biases, kind of like in-group, out-group biases, where people who aren't like us, we have this quick decision-making part of our brain that treats them differently than people we consider in our in-group, and this leads to lots of problems, racial prejudice, gender prejudice, any kind of way people are different than somebody else prejudice, and that creates discrimination and maybe violence and conflicts. And so being able to reduce prejudice is a good thing. Another benefit of mindfulness is reducing our tendency to focus on negative things. And this is kind of a big one, I think. We have a negative bias, just our brains are set up that way, which makes sense because if you hear a snap crack, a stick snap and make a crack, let's say that could be anything. It could be a squirrel, or it could be a lion about to eat you. So if you automatically check to see if it's something negative, or just assume it's positive, you're less likely to get eaten and survive and pass your genes on. So it's good that people are still alive. Bad, we have this negative bias because we don't have as many things that immediately are going to kill us in our environment, but we still cling on to a lot of that negativity, and it affects us negatively. So one example is, let's say I make a comment and it's supposed to be a constructive comment about oh, in the future, this is something you could work on, but then you see it and be like, oh my God, I can't do anything right. All she wrote was the bad stuff. I worked so hard on it. And that's not my intent, of course. I think you're doing a great job. We're just always working to improve. And our brains need 5 positive comments for every 1 comment for you to think that they balance out. So that's crazy. I want you to think about that one more second. So if you hear 5 positives and 1 negative, I might have said that backwards, but it's 5 positives to every 1 negative, you will think that they are balanced. If you hear 4 positives to about every 1 negative, you'll think that the negatives happen more often. This is just one way our brains are crazy and try and trick us, is that we remember the negatives and they make more of an impact. But mindfulness can help us reduce that tendency. So a question for you is, if there was a technology that would increase your happiness, that would help you do all of these things, would you be interested in it? And if I said it is a technology that's really old, and it's not like an app or anything, it's a practice that you would have to do, would you still be interested in something that has scientifically shown to make you more happy and help with all these things? And the technology, the practice is meditation, which is interesting because we know that there's a lot of scientific research about how it can rewire our brains and help with all of the above benefits. So we are going to try that in a different video, in a separate video, and we'll see what that is like. So we haven't done our meditation video yet, but we are going to wrap up some final thoughts about the mental health section in this video. So things to keep in mind is, one should pay attention to patterns and learn from them and try not to repeat them. So that is something that's really good with our mental health. If there's something that I do and every time it goes badly, that's not something I should keep doing. Let me see if I can think of an example. One example that comes to mind is recharge time. And that is something that's really important to figure out, what activities refill your tank and what activities are enjoyable, but they still kind of drain you a little bit. I know time on my phone and watching videos is fun, but it doesn't necessarily recharge me. So some things that I like to do that really kind of like recharge me are like maybe take a bath or sit in the chair and read a really good novel, and then maybe there's a dog or a cat sitting in my lap, or depending on the time of the year, like gardening in my yard I think is really fun and satisfying. I like to plant things and watch them grow. Um, so maybe there's a time when I'm like, oh, I have a lot of things I should do, like the bathroom's a mess, I should clean the bathroom, but I really need some recharge time. And then sometimes I'll do that and things will work out, or maybe I'll clean the bathroom and then I'm like, I hate everybody, and it doesn't work out in the long run. So that is a pattern that we always try and learn from and not repeat the negative way. Okay, so also let's talk about finally having an annual checkup by a good mental health provider, like a counselor, a psychologist, or a therapist, has two benefits. One, the symptoms, if there is any mental illness, would be caught earlier when it's less severe and easier to treat. So like adolescent years are often a time when mental illness, perhaps some of the two common ones are anxiety and depression, will start to surface. And if we can catch them now, um, one person can learn to deal with them or like find constructive ways of dealing with it instead of it getting worse and worse and worse over time and building on destructive behaviors. And then by the time, let's say, you're 30, you have all this history that's so much harder to deal with than if you just figured it out like when you're 16. Um, and then another thing is that if a major life crisis did occur, like a divorce in the family, a death, or any kind of major life transition, a person would already know where to go to from help. As you may know, when a major thing happens, it makes what was hard seem almost impossible. So if somebody needs help, waiting until there's a major life crisis can make it almost insurmountable to get help. So knowing where help is before that happens can be really essential. So let's just quick talk about this. We know that there is a lot of stigma around mental illness, and we know that it's perfectly acceptable for people to go to the doctor to get a checkup, or the dentist, or the eye doctor, or any of those things. But it doesn't seem quite okay to go to a mental health professional for a checkup or a regular visit. And that is interesting. A lot of times we'll think of a person who needs to go to a therapist as like weak, or, why can't you just get over it, or what's your problem? And well, we wouldn't ask somebody with cancer, like, what's your problem? Why can't you just get over it? So these mental illness is a disease just like other diseases. Going to a counselor or a psychologist doesn't mean you're crazy. I've been to a counselor and I'm not crazy. I'm a functional adult. I have a full-time permanent job. I have been married for over a decade to the same person, and I pay my taxes. So another interesting statistic is that almost 20% of young people have a mental illness. And I find this interesting because I know if, let's say, 20% of teenagers had cancer, there would be like benefits, and there would be walks, and we'd be selling bracelets, but we don't see that with mental illness. And it's interesting, and I would challenge you with all the things you know about the brain and psychology and all those things to decrease the stigma around mental illness instead of perpetuating it. And then this would help decrease the number of people who are suffering and even dying from mental illness. I should also say that if you or someone you know is struggling with a mental illness, then there's lots of places to help. A couple of examples are telling an adult you trust, and then they can get you connected with resources, or there are a number of websites that one can get connected with. One example is NAMI, N-A-M-I. And with that, we're going to finish up our mental health